Hello, so this video is going to be about installing the Exchange server for our New York office. So our domain controller is ready and the Exchange server operating system is ready for New York office, and then it is also joined to the domain. So we are now going to install the important components that is required for Exchange server. So let's get started. So if you see here, this is the .NET Framework 4.5.2, because Exchange Server 2016 requires 4.5.2 as a component to be installed. So you need to have .NET Framework, which is running the version 4.5.2. If you try to install .NET Framework from Server Manager, it is only 4.5, which is not going to work. So I just downloaded it from Microsoft website, so you can also download that. So after running this and completing the installation, we will just move to the next component, which is IIS, Internet Information Service. This is another important component for Exchange Server, where it's going to store all its data, actually, because your Outlook web access and Exchange Server 2016 is now accessible through Internet Explorer. So all those data that you use to access Exchange or the Outlook web access, it requires IIS, because all those virtual directories, all those websites and everything is going to be created in IIS. So IIS is important component and it is required. So let's see now. Okay, so the installation is done for .NET Framework. It is asking me to restart, but I'm gonna say restart later, and then I will try to install IIS. I'll click on add roles and features. Next. Click on next here. So it is role based, and then this is the server where we will be installing our IIS. And one other thing that you need to select is Active Directory Domain Services. So Active Directory Domain Services is also required, but I just installed it before I just do the lab for you. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let it be installed. So what you can do is, so this is another component that is also needed. So when you are installing IIS, what you can do is you can select this and also select this, add required features, press next. Okay, now we do not need to install any features at this time. We only needed to install the role, and I'll press next. So now it is asking me that, okay, do you want to completely install IIS, or you only need some components to be installed? So Exchange Server don't need you to install all IIS services, role services. There are only some specific that you can install, and once you select those and those are complete, the Exchange server will proceed with the installation. And one of them are dynamic content compression, and the other is digest authentication. So you will have to just keep looking and see where those services are, and here you go. So digest authentication, WMI compatibility, this is the other component that is required. So I will just go ahead and find WMI compatibility. So when you expand IIS management compatibility, you have IIS 6 WMI compatibility, and then the other one is client certificate mapping authentication. So client certificate mapping authentication, HTTP direction service, and where is HTTP redirection service, And there's one more, which is request monitor. So request monitor is another role service that is required for IIS. So once you are done with that, simply click on install and it will install the IIS for you. So those are the main components that you need in order to install your Exchange server. But once again, if you have more size of, like, you have more storage in your server and you got no company policy which tells you that you do not need to install extra components, then you can just go ahead and proceed with the installation of all those web services roles, web server roles, because for most our organizations they don't have any policy which says that only install required components, only install required applications. So if I have more storage and I have more RAM or hardware resources, I will go ahead and then I'll just install all IIS components, because maybe in future I will be installing some other things which will also require IIS. So my IIS is going to be ready. I'm not saying it's a best practice, but you can do that if you want, if you don't have company policies or any other stuff going on. So the other thing that we need to install is Microsoft Unified Communication Managed API 4.0 core runtime, which is also accessible from internet and you can download. And I have already downloaded that, and this is the setup, so I will just run it. And it says there is a pending reboot. So if you remember, when we installed our components, one of our components for .NET Framework 4.5.2, it asked us to reboot. So some application requires you to reboot and some don't. And there are some applications, like you saw, that told us that before I install in your server, you have to reboot because there is a pending reboot. So we are just going to reboot, and once we are back on, we will do the installation of our Unified Communication Managed API. So again, you need to install IIS, and you need to install .NET Framework. You need to install Microsoft Unified Communication Managed API, and you also need to install Active Directory Management Tools. So these are the requirements or prerequisites for your Exchange Server 2016. Make sure your Exchange Server 2016 is joined to the domain and you are able to ping and do the NS lookup with your domain controller before proceeding with the installation. So I'm now going to install Microsoft Unified Communication Managed API, and then we are going to end this video, and the next part, or the second part of this video, is going to be about installing our Exchange server. So as you can see in here, it says that it is missing media foundation. So let's go ahead and check out if we are really missing media foundation or not. And it is part of the IIS. So I will just simply go to server manager. So this is a good way for you to learn how to add services when one of your roles are already installed. So add role and feature, not this one. I will simply click on IIS and see if I can do it from here. If I click on manage, you can see that add role and feature, remove roles and feature. Let me click on remove roles and feature and see if I can. Okay, so it tells us that you need to install Media Foundation. So this is again one of the other prerequisites, and I was thinking that it is part of the IIS, which is not. So in order to install this feature, just go to add roles and feature, and this time we are not installing a role, we are installing a feature. So once you come in the feature page, there is Windows Media Foundation that you can simply select and then install. Here you go. So Media Foundation, press next and install. So my bad, I'm sorry. So the Media Foundation is a feature that you can install from Add Rules and Feature Wizard. So this is also one of the components that you need in order to install your Exchange server. So to install your Exchange server, you need IIS, you need .NET Framework 4.5.2, you need Microsoft Unified Communication Managed API, you need Active Directory Management Tools, and you also need Media Foundation in order to install your Exchange server. So close, and then I'll close this and run the setup again, and I think it requires a reboot. So let's reboot our server, and once we do that, then we should be good to go. Alright, so it is now restarted, and now the setup we are running should work fine. So let's see. Cool. Next, I have read the license install. So it is going to take some time to do the installation, and I'm going to pause the video. Once done, I'll be back. The installation is done. Simply click on finish and we are good to go. So we are now ready to install our Exchange Server 2016. So once again, you need to have IIS installed, .NET Framework 4.5.2, Microsoft Unified Communication Managed API, Active Directory Management Tools, Media Foundation feature, and that's that's all that we need. So make sure that you have all those components ready before you install your Exchange server. So I'll see you on the next video. I hope you have learned something. Thank you.